Good morning. Today on Spotlight, my one-on-one conversation with former Vice President and now the 2020 Democratic nominee for president, Joe Biden. He hails from what is nicknamed the First State. Why? Because on December 7th, 1787, it became the first of the 13 original states to ratify the U.S. Constitution. I caught up with Mr. Biden a few days ago to talk about some of the major issues at play in this year's election. And later on our Sunday morning program, Derek Scott and Joshua Elling will share their latest plans for the East Jefferson area of Detroit. It's Sunday, September the 6th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight.
This is a life-changing election. This will determine what America is going to look like for a long, long time.
Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for joining us today. If elected, what is the very first thing you would do as president to get our American economy back on track?
First of all, you can't get it back on track till you deal with the COVID crisis. And this president has come along. Trump is panicked, frozen, did nothing for months. And we've all paid a terrible price for his failure to lead. There are 180,000 Americans who have lost their lives so far. 6,700 Michiganders. Millions are out of work. Unemployment rate in Michigan has doubled. Nearly half of the black Detroiters and a third of Hispanics Detroiters say they've lost their job. And so what I would do, I've laid out a comprehensive plan how I deal with this pandemic to get under control. I've told the president, I even had a conversation with him back in March, tell him, here's what I do. He asked what I thought, and I gave it to him, and I said, and use it as your own. But look, because things didn't have to be this bad, back in August, the average was 1,000 people dying a day of COVID. 5 European countries, the largest 5 with a population as big as ours, 54 a day are dying. As president, I'm going to listen to the science, public health experts, promote nationwide mask and social distancing, and I'm going to ramp up remote testing and create a pandemic testing board like FDR did, a war production board to get millions of tests out there and people doing testing and tracing. And we're going to build back public health jobs as well in the process of doing it. And all of this is going to put us in a position where we're going to be able to open up what we do, ramp up PPE, use the full force of the Defense Production Act, protective gear, have a supply commander to help get this out, get schools the guidance and resources they need. Right now, they're unwilling to even provide for the basic funding that are for cleaning schools and for providing the PPE for schools. I mean, think of that. We're in the middle of this crisis. Parents are not able to go back to work if they have a job because they're worried about their child, no one to take care of them. So there's so many things that I would do that are fundamentally different than this president. I guess I could have said it in one word. I'd take responsibility.
Any truth to the reports that you are eyeballing a $1 trillion stimulus package if you're elected and you get into office and get back into power?
Well, yeah, because look, here's what we're talking about. And I pay for everything I'm talking about. The president has given basically $2 trillion in tax cuts, and $1.6 trillion has gone to the wealthiest 1% in America. They don't need a tax cut. They know they don't need the tax cut. So why aren't we investing in providing for the whole notion of how we pay for the protective equipment that people need? One of the things I'd be doing is making sure that we did what we did in our administration. We inherited a political debacle, an economic debacle. We're heading into recession. The president gave me responsibility for getting $800 billion out the door in 18 months to make sure that kept us from going off a cliff. What'd we do? We kept your first responders on the job, police, firefighters, doctors, nurses, all the folks who are the ones who are out there making sure we can stay safe in this situation, keeping school teachers employed. These are things that we have to do that we can easily do and pay for. And I'm happy to go into the detail of how I pay for it, but it will not, what I'm talking about, will not increase the deficit. We're going to have people starting to everybody pay their fair share. You got something like 19 corporations out there that don't pay a penny, many of whom have made over billions of dollars a year. Just pay their fair share. We're not talking about, no one under $400,000 is going to have a penny increase in their taxes.
Mr. Biden, President Trump and Republicans say that you're a liberal socialist and that the first thing you would do if you get into office would raise taxes. And they look at the fact that you have support from Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and even your running mate Kamala Harris, and they say that that's proof that you are too left-wing.
What its proof is, I beat them all. I beat them all without taking any different stand than I took when I ran for the United States presidency for the nomination. And they've rallied behind. The proof is, now look, do I look like the left-wing socialist who, you all know me, you know my family, you know my heart, you know who I am? The idea that I'm going to be the guy out there raping and pillaging the countryside, it's just absolutely bizarre. Not a thing he has said so far has been truthful. I am not if you make less than $400,000 a year, you're not going to see a penny of your taxes raised. If you make more than that, you're going to start to pay your fair share. No one's going to pay more than 39% in their taxes on the payroll taxes. But every corporation that's making money is going to pay at least 15% of what they make. Amazon, they're not bad people. They make billions of dollars. They don't pay a single penny in taxes. Y'all think that's fair? If you say pay your fair share, that's raising taxes. Well, I'm for that. But I'm going to make sure the money goes into helping people. Make sure they can pay their mortgages. Make sure they have a place to live in. Make sure that they have a way to send their kids to school, improving education, all those things. I said when I ran, I'm going to rebuild the backbone of this country, the middle class. And the middle class has been ripped badly.
The other day you said that President Trump, by his actions and by his rhetoric, is stoking violence in our cities. What would a Biden-Harris ticket do in terms of improving race relations and stand up to violence and crime that happens in many of our major cities and even some of our smaller cities?
Well, you know what? The idea that I think the words we should listen to are Julia Jackson's, words. Jacob Blake's mom, she said, she's a woman of great courage and character. She said, we need to heal this unimaginable pain. She said, at this moment, she said, more than anything, we have to heal the nation. The current president wants you to live in fear, and he advertises himself as a figure of order. He isn't. He's part of the problem. He's part of a problem that I, as president, will give all my resolve to healing. I'm going to deal with, as I said, the way this works. I've been able to bring together, if I were right now, what I'd be doing, I'd be bringing the mayors, I'd be bringing in the cities in question, the police union, the police officers, the community, and the community leaders together and work it out. Look, I've dealt with law enforcement my whole career. It's kind of interesting. Remember, I was too tough on crime before. Now I'm a patsy for crime. I wonder how that happened so quickly in his mind. But the point is that the one thing cops hate the most are bad cops. The vast majority of cops are good, honorable, decent women and men. And I'd give them a chance to sit at the table. They understand we have to change some of the rules. We have to be more transparent. They get it. And I bring in the community leaders as well. But those who protest in the name of protest, loot and burn, they should be arrested and they should go to jail. They should be tried.
We appreciate presidential candidate Biden making time for our spotlight audience. And we hope to do the same for President Donald Trump, the Republican nominee. Coming up, the latest on one of Detroit's fastest growing development areas. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is Derek Scott and Josh Elling of the East Jefferson Development Corporation. Good seeing both of you. You doing well?
Doing well, Chuck. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, it certainly is. It is an absolute pleasure on our end as well. Derek, let me open up with you. About a year or so ago, we talked about all the development plans for that whole East Jefferson area there, just off the road from downtown Detroit. Bring us up to date on where you are now, because I know you have some recent news to report.
Well, Chuck, we just recently released our master plan effort that we started a year ago, which we came to talk to you about when we were kicking it off with over 650 or so community members. And we just wrapped it up with sort of a presentation that lays out a vision over the next 15 years for 5 phases of development that was really informed by the community. And so the first phase of that is already complete or near completion with projects that'll come online by the end of this year or have already come online over the last 2 years. And that's $10 million of development. The next 4 phases will kick off over the next few years with roughly $280 million in development planned for the next 2 years and construction starts. And so what we're excited about is the fact that this plan and this vision, we knew something was going to happen in the area. And what we said is, how do we make sure we go out to the community to figure out how we deliver on it? What is the community's vision for it? As we see development happen in the neighborhood, how do we make sure to prioritize neighborhood businesses, local entrepreneurs, Detroit residents, as far as housing is concerned? How do we make sure that there's affordable housing? And how do we make sure that Detroiters have an active opportunity to not only participate in development, but be impacted by jobs that are created, as well as participate in equity as these developments come online?
Sure. Josh, you and Derek work pretty much hand in glove. It's all one, but it's sort of split in terms of your areas of domain. Talk to me about the role that you play in all of this. And I know that for you, the buy-in from the community is also crucial.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, so Jefferson East, was founded back in 1994 to support really the Jefferson-Chalmers Business District. And about 5 years ago, we realized that unless we were directly driving development, it wasn't going to happen in an inclusive fashion. So we formed East Jefferson Development Corporation as the development subsidiary of Jefferson East, which is a nonprofit arm. So we had the good fortune of being able to bring Mr. Scott on board to directly drive development within the Jefferson-Chalmers Business District and other places throughout the East Jefferson corridor. So what I like to say is how Jefferson East creates the conditions for inclusive development and growth. EJ Devco directly drives that growth through inclusive development, local price points, affordable housing development, to benefit long-term residents that have stuck it out. But what's really critical for us, when we looked especially at the Jefferson-Chalmers Business District, we had not done a deep dive with residents in quite some time. And so now with EJ Devco controlling some properties, doing some direct development, we wanted to make sure we went back to the residents in Jefferson-Chalmers to ensure that the vision for the development of that historic commercial corridor is also their vision and what they want to see happen in their neighborhood.
Yeah, when this is all said and done, what is it going to look like 10 years from now? What will people see in that area that perhaps they don't see today?
Well, what we're hoping people will say is this is a prototype for what inclusive development can look like in the neighborhood, that has a mix of businesses, that has local entrepreneurs with storefronts that are activated, blight and vacancy is reduced on the corridor, but it has not displaced Detroit residents and it has not displaced existing businesses. But it's truly an environment where we're experiencing growth, and that growth is inclusive of Detroiters as well as other folks who will come into the footprint and participate in development with us.
All right.
On top of that, Chuck, I think the other part is some of the major iconic buildings in that commercial corridor, buildings like the Vanity Ballroom and St. Columba Hall and Faith Church. These buildings we have a sort of a plan to help get those buildings redeveloped, both ones we control directly like the Vanity Ballroom, and then working in partnership with other developers on projects like the St. Columba Hall project, Faith Church, and others. So it's really a way to directly drive development through our development corp, but also work with like-minded developers that buy into our inclusive development principles, push the renovation of those major structures forward in a manner that fits the community's vision.
All right, we need to take a quick little break. We'll hurry right back with some more questions right after this. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Either one of you can take this. Drill down a little bit in terms of development and some of the partners that you have, and where's the money for all of this coming from? Because we know it doesn't happen overnight and it doesn't happen by magic.
And so, Chuck, I think a lot of folks think when you come out with a plan like this that you got deep pockets and the money's just going to flow. And one of the biggest challenges is making sure that we've aligned all of the strategic partners in our corridor. That's landowners, community members, but then also working with true private, public-private partnership with the city of Detroit, with our philanthropic partners, such as the Kresge Foundation, who was a big catalyst for this plan. Not only did they fund the plan, but they helped us with quite a bit of acquisition. So, we overpaid for quite a bit of properties to sort of pry them out of the hands of sort of bad actors or people who may not have been a bad actor, but just kind of didn't have a development strategy and was ready to let go of property, but had held it for so long. So one of the challenges was really getting access to that property and then working with landowners who had property, but had significant gaps. And so we've worked with the city of Detroit to sort of identify certain buckets of money, like the Strategic Neighborhood Fund, working with philanthropy to plug gaps so that we can provide inclusive leases that subsidize tenants who can't afford a traditional market rate lease, for example, eliminating some of those barriers to access to retail spaces. But then also thinking through creative tools such as this targeted redevelopment area that we're working to put in place with the state and the city, which will allow us to leverage a lot more incentive within the district and reinvest this capture back into the district so that it's not extracted out, but as development happens, that capture goes back into the district to allow us to continue to do all of this inclusive work. So it hasn't been easy. Out of a $280 million plan, there's about a $24 million equity raise that will go out to the community first, as opposed to investors, to say if community members want to participate, we want the community to have equity and access to wealth creation in their own neighborhoods, as opposed to some outside investment group coming in and investing and extracting that value. So it'll be a heavy lift over the next couple of months to really formalize what that looks like.
Oh, I'm sure. Josh, what does this mean to the larger picture in terms of Detroit and its development and the comeback that we all too often talk about in a good way, especially coming out of or in the midst of COVID, I should say, COVID-19. What does this mean big picture wise?
Great question, Chuck. I think one of the things that we're doing and why a lot of our philanthropic partners are very excited about the approach we've taken is we're looking to build a template of how you can really foster development in Detroit's neighborhoods through a combination of having a nonprofit-owned development arm, coupled with new innovative financing tools, and then aligning city philanthropy, strategic neighborhood fund, and then being driven by the community's voice and vision. I mean, that's something we haven't seen often in Detroit. A lot of times a developer could come, be well-meaning, have one community meeting and drop a development somewhere. But that's not really engaging the neighborhood on what they want to see happen in their neighborhood.
Which leads to excuse me for interrupting, which all too often we've seen in many cities leads to that tension between people who have been in that neighborhood for years and the new developers coming in wanting to make money. But if you can get them so that they're on the same page, you don't have that quote unquote regentrification word in a bad way.
Absolutely. And the other added benefit of the model we've built with EJ Devco being our development arm, any profits that EJ Devco makes are then donated back to Jefferson East to support our public safety work, our foreclosure prevention work, our neighborhood stabilization work. So there's a return of that benefit from the investment in the neighborhood to support the broader community. I also think, too, this is really critical as we're going to come out of COVID, we're going to fight our way out of this recession together. But how do we build back better, right? How do we make our neighborhood stronger in a more equitable and inclusive way that involves the neighbors and the residents that have stuck it out? And I think the model we've built between JI and EJ Devco is a template that we want to share with the rest of the city as a best practice to drive development deep in Detroit's neighborhoods.
Right. All right. You mentioned the word build back better. I think we heard that a lot during the Democratic National Convention. Right after this break, I want to come out of that. I want to ask both of you very quickly, if Joe Biden becomes the next president, and he has been saying build back better, what you would need from him and the federal government to complete what you're trying to do. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Gentlemen, right before we went to the break, Josh, you said Build Back Better. I don't know if that came from the Democratic National Convention, but I certainly heard it a lot there. We've just did an interview with Democratic nominee for President Joe Biden. If he becomes president, what would you like to see him do to help you complete what you are trying to do on East Jefferson?
And Chuck, I think, quickly, support for affordable and mixed income housing is going to be important. Federal support for the home program, for CDBG funds for that. But also, as we look at the East Jefferson corridor, longer term solutions to the flooding in Jefferson Chalmers. How do we raise the seawalls on the Detroit River to deal with a changing climate and more precipitation? And where are the funds available for the complete rebuild of Jefferson Avenue to replace the sewer lines from Grosse Pointe to downtown? About a $61 million project. All of those key infrastructure things are key to helping us remain competitive and support our neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, it's also tax credits, expanding tax credit reform so that there's opportunity for rehabilitation within distressed districts. And it's also expansion of small business programs and SBA loans, and making sure that especially minority entrepreneurs have not only access to capital, but that the requirements to access that capital is on more flexible terms that allows us to have entrepreneurs that can actually open businesses that thrive and are successful long term.
All right. And all I have time is a yes or no. Joe Biden is facing Donald Trump, who's trying to get reelected. If he becomes the next president or reelected president, I imagine the message would be the same.
Absolutely. I think what we're looking for is ways that public investment can drive the private market. All right. And then have the benefits flow out to everyone.
Derek, you agree 100%?
I sure hope so.
All right. Very good. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck with all that you're trying to do there. It certainly is getting a nice facelift there for the city of Detroit, and we know that you've got bigger and better plans ahead. We appreciate you joining us today on Spotlight.
Thanks again, Chuck.
And finally today, a special programming note. Over on our sister station, WXYZ-TV 20 at 11 o'clock this morning, I'll begin a 2-month-long special Spotlight series inside Michigan's African-American vote. We invite you to tune in to our guest, political scientist Dave Dulio of Oakland University and radio talk show host of 910 AM Superstation, Livonia Perryman. Have a fun and safe Labor Day. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the Spotlight. Have a great day.